way for you guys to build?
A real player in the developing workforce for the new companies coming in, whether that's in automated industrial technology, artificial intelligence, you name it. Technology is going to be the way of the future, so we're hoping that we can supply the workforce demands going forward.
Hi there, my name is Jake Logan. I'm the CEO of the Arizona Charter Schools Association. As the only non-doctor on the panel, this is mildly intimidating, but I'm going to stick with my guns here and do my best. So just by way of background, Arizona Charter Schools make up about 22% of students in public K-12 education in the state of Arizona. Within the city of Surprise, it's about 35%, which is higher than the state average. Probably for a variety of reasons, but a lot of this is a very high growth community. Before I roll, I can't help myself but just say thank you to Representative Osborne publicly. For those of you that don't know, she has been a champion on education issues at the state capitol. I love working with her. She's one of the people down there that takes the time to learn the issues, and that sounds sort of fundamental, but a lot of times it's fast and it's rock and roll, and it doesn't always go that way. So I'm a huge Representative Osborne fan. Okay, for us, and I suspect it's the same with my colleague from Dysart, which is it's learning loss. The name of the game right now is how do we get kids caught up from COVID, and I know the districts are working hard at it, we're working hard at it, but if I had to say one thing new within the charter school community, it is all focuses on how to get students back to where they ought to be and they need to be, and that is all hands on deck 24/7.
All right, well that's going to lead us into our next question. We'll pick up there. I will share, because I do represent the University of Phoenix here. For us, I would say same to ASU, return to growth. Higher ed, if you don't know, for almost 10 years, overall higher ed within the United States has actually been on the decline. So year over year, for about 10 years straight, college enrollment per capita in the U.S. has actually been declining. And so that's been a trend we've been aware of for a decade. ASU's an exception to that. My University of Phoenix is an exception to that, but overall, that's been the trend in the United States. So it's good to see growth in some of these sectors, especially in Arizona. And also something that we've done brand new is a direct assessment. So if you're looking for what's new and cutting edge in higher ed, direct assessment is new. The federal government hasn't figured out what it wants to do with it yet, but they finally said colleges, you can start pursuing it. I don't know if ASU has anything yet, but I'm sure you got some stuff on the burners there. And if you're thinking, what does that mean? If you've ever taken a college class and said, but I already know all of this, that's direct assessment. All right, it's how do we redesign college for all the stuff you already know, so you don't have to pay for it again. So really exciting for us. We're excited for what it can mean for the U.S. and global workforce to be able to kind of change the paradigm of a bachelor's degree. So excited to be here with all of you, but let's talk about the tough stuff. Let's talk about the challenges. So education obviously changed quite a bit during the pandemic. As Raul said, this is the first in-person meeting we've had where not a single attendee is wearing a mask. So that doesn't mean the pandemic's over, but it means that at least mentally a lot of us have shifted. So what challenges are we still dealing with coming out of the pandemic, and what are the new challenges? What are the biggest things that your institution needs to tackle to really make sure you're on the right footing and that you're serving your community the way you want to? Jake, do you want to start and just share a little more about what charters are doing in that area?
Yeah, and Melissa Holloway's here. She should probably be answering this question better than I did because she's run some amazing schools here in the west side of town. So I think for us, again, I'll focus on learning loss, which is I think it is we had a tough 2 years, and we got to get kids back on track, and it's not good. And there are super high-performing schools that everybody was affected by. And so for us, it really is, how do we get, and again, my colleague from Dysart would say the same thing, I think, which is how do we get kids back in the zone to that grade level? It's after-school programs, it's homework tables, it's doubling down on what we know works. We're fortunate that there was a lot of federal resources to help with that. The state also did a lot. But for us, the name of the game is how do we get kids caught up and prepared so they can go to University of Phoenix and Arizona State University or wherever they're next, or have a field and a career that they're prepared to do. So for us, I just think the short term has to be like a laser focused on what we do for our students who got jammed in the pandemic.
Jim, do you want to, just real quick, and we'll go over to West-MEC for sure. Do you want to share all what you're seeing in Dysart? Is there any specific demographics you mentioned across the board? Is it affecting, males more than females? Is it Title I more than upper middle classes? Is there certain demographics that the K-12 system should focus on to get people back out?
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity to answer the question. I will tell you that it's all demographics. And, we're at a point now where the learning loss was real. However, it's time to roll our sleeves up and take care of things and to make sure that we eliminate all of our excuses, to provide every resource necessary for our teachers and our students to be successful. And so in Dysart schools, we're looking for opportunities for our teachers to earn additional funds to be able to tutor students before and after school. We're having conversations about what do we need to do for our students to provide that additional support when they get home, when they're working on math and there's no one available at home to help them. In Dysart schools, we did not shut our schools down. We were shut down in 2020 for that last quarter of the year, from March until the end of the school year, and then we reopened our schools for the last 2 years. Even within that, we saw a difference in our students. Our students weren't the same as they had been in the past during the pandemic. We're now ready to move forward. We have great work ahead of us. We have great responsibilities to this community, to our parents, and to our kids to make sure that we provide to them the education that allows them to be most career ready when they graduate from us. And so the things that we're doing are exactly what you described. We are looking for every way possible to make sure that our students overcome the learning loss and that we are eliminating every excuse that is tying them back to that piece, so that as they move forward, they become the most responsible and productive citizens in our community.
Scott, yeah.
So a couple of challenges that we face, everybody on this panel, everybody in this room knows that there's a shortage of the workforce, and so the teacher shortage is real. Couple that with the fact that when everybody's hired, that means salaries and benefits and wages all go up. And so that makes it even more complicated, since I believe Arizona's about 50th in the nation in teacher pay. So that's a real challenge for us. And so the second thing that happened through COVID was that some businesses closed, some businesses downsized, some businesses have a hybrid work schedule, some businesses have their workforce working directly from home. Well, part of our program to develop career services and workforce development for our students is students being out in those career fields, which means we're going to have to double our efforts, to double our partnerships to be able to get students job shadowing, internships, externships, and the work-based learning experience that we require of our students to ensure that they're ready to go to work. So there's some great challenges that came because of COVID. There's some positives that came out of COVID, which is the use of technology and our ability to get together and see one another and to be able to accomplish things not necessarily being in person. So there's some things that are positive. But greatest challenge for us is workforce and how we're going to pay and provide benefits and the quality of life for those individuals that we hire and keep them.
So, Dr. Tyner, Dr. Sandrin, what about higher ed? What are the challenges right now that you're seeing at Ottawa or at ASU?
Yeah, this may sound odd, Chris. You mentioned our. Oh, sorry. This may sound odd, Chris. Given our growth at ASU, one of our challenges is we need to grow more, actually. In a word, resilience is something we have to be thinking about our students and our communities. Many of you remember when the pandemic hit in spring of 20, the nation lost 10 million jobs, really, really quickly. For those of you who are aware of the jobs and workforce data, you know that different groups, different demographics experience that differently. There was one group that dipped a little bit and came right back. That was individuals that have a college degree. Our challenge is twinned very much with what Jim and Jake mentioned, which is ensuring that students that come to us not only are prepared, but know that they're prepared, because much of their success is around mindset. If they have been engaged only virtually and don't feel they learned calculus as well as they should have, how do we in higher education ensure that we provide for them the resources to succeed? COVID was horrible, don't get me wrong, but we learned a lot of things. We learned ways in which technology works, and we learned where technology doesn't work well. And so our biggest challenge is how do we get that message out more clearly that yes, COVID happened, no matter where you're coming from, we welcome you at ASU and you have a path to success. And that means not only degrees, that means workforce development too, absolutely, that means degrees, but what about individuals who are returning to the workforce, who the labor market got turned on its head as a result of COVID? We at ASU not only have degree programs, but we have something we call the learning enterprise, which means anyone can come to us with our assets, our learning assets, and learn a little bit about cybersecurity, learn a little bit about supply chain. Still a thing as I came down Bell Road, not a lot of cars in parking lots yet. So those are a few ways we're working to advance that. Outside of that 140,000 student learners I shared with you, we're serving currently 310,000 learners who are not engaged in a degree program. That means they're learning a little bit about something they need to succeed in their world. So in a nutshell, the challenge is how do we get the word out much more clearly, loudly, and instill that confidence in our future workforce and our future students.
I'll add to that, so I completely agree with everything that everybody said here. I think one of the major challenges that's facing this nation is the work ethic of our students. You start to see the head shaking pretty quickly. These are the hidden secrets that nobody really wants to talk about, but the truth is that students are not prepared for the rigors of college when they get to the college level. So some of the challenges are in their education, and the last 2 years certainly didn't help that at the high school level as they work through teaching students at home or students learning on their own at home. And so they're coming to us a little less prepared, and then that also coupled with the work ethic that is really needed to be successful in college is, I think, one of the major obstacles and one of the challenges in this country.
So I want to ask about a specific demographic, and this I want to say with Todd and Dennis here. So in the U.S., about 15% of working adults have some college credit, but no college credential, meaning they didn't get an associate's or a bachelor's or whatever they're pursuing, but they actually have credit, meaning they took a college course and earned college credit. It's about 40 million working adults right now. How do we go about re-engaging? We talk about that trend, 10-year decline in U.S. college participation, right? So how do we go about re-engaging these working adults who went out, spent money, spent time, but never actually accomplished what they were looking for? How do we get them back into the fold to say, this is worth it, and this is what's new, and why you should come back?
I think Chris is messaging again, and it's saying out loud too, that design that we had years ago didn't work, and we own that, and we need to figure out what is the way forward. And the way forward is not, I think, what has been historical, that you start a college degree right out of high school and you complete it in 4 years. Many do that, and that's awesome. But that is not the way that many students are coming to us or going to be coming to us. That's not the way the workforce of the future will be built. Not only with 4-year degrees and graduate degrees, which are incredibly important, don't get me wrong, but what are the academic assets that we bring that go outside of a 4-year degree? To go back to those individuals to say, what are those credits? What are you doing right now? What would you like to do? And if it's, I just need to learn a little bit about logistics, then we can do that. But what if, we were doing some of this too, what if you learn a little bit about logistics and that helps you in your business, build your business, serve your business better? And what if that's also stackable towards degree credits to add on to your credits towards a college degree if you want to do that? So I think it's going to take, I'm going to use the I word, you've heard us at ASU say it before, innovation. For those of you who watch US News and World Report rankings, we just yesterday wore my maroon and gold tie for the occasion. We're the most innovative university in the nation, ranked number 1 for 8 years in a row. It's because of things like this, thinking about not only how we message, but what do we build? Not only the degree programs, but also what are the paths into our assets, our learning assets, our research assets, our assets that make a difference in the world, so that many, many more students who started and didn't stop, and there are scores of tens of millions of them out there that we need to reconnect with a new design, and ASU is building that design.
So we're a lot like you, but we have an online component, and that's where the number of adult students end up finding their place. It's making education available to them at the time that they need it available. So it has to be very flexible. That's what they're looking for. How do you get the word out to them? How do they make sure they know? That's a real challenging question, and it comes at a time when people in this country, including their children, are talking about whether or not a college degree is worth it or not. So I think the best thing to do is to help them understand the differences between what a college degree can get you and what not having a college degree doesn't get you or does get you if you don't have a college degree. Making them aware of those statistics, they're pretty significant and they don't lie. I think that's getting that word out. So it goes back to sort of the marketing of it and how to get the word out that a degree is valuable.
Thank you. I know that was a niche question, and but I think it's an important question. We talk about workforce development in the labor market. I think that's a key demographic that we'll have to tackle. So I want to switch a little bit now to K-12. So we talked about some of the challenges. You talked about the learning gap, some of the delays that were caused by the pandemic. I want to talk about a topic we don't normally talk about at our education forums, but it's always relevant, and I think this year it's even more so. So Arizona had, I think, and nobody's fact checked me on this yet, but the largest budget in our state history just passed, and so.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. All right. I'm like I've said this at many events now. No one said you're wrong. So so the largest budget in our state history has just passed, and I'm not personally. I do obviously government relations to the chamber for a number of years here. I'm not one that believes that money is the answer to all of education's problems. I believe there's a lot of things we need to be doing with the money better. I think there's other things we need to be doing that doesn't involve money, but money is definitely part of the equation. And so what I want to know is, we talked about the teacher shortage. We've talked about the need for filling this gap that didn't exist before. And so we had a teacher shortage, and now we've got a new problem in that learners are not where they maybe would have been if the pandemic hadn't happened. What can the state or local governments be doing better to serve West-MEC, to serve charter schools, to serve Dysart? What can the city of Surprise or El Mirage, or what can the state of Arizona be doing? I don't know if federal dollars are a whole different ballgame, but what can the leaders that we have access to immediately in our backyard, what can they be doing better to address these new challenges that came out post-pandemic? And I'll let anyone try and go first, because that's always a fun question talking about us. Go ahead.
Okay, I'll jump in. So just one thing in your last question, I know it was a higher ed question, but we do have some, you were talking about people that have not came back to college, took some credit, but one of the things that I think is really good in Arizona is our dual enrollment program. We have a really world-class community college system along with our universities. And for kids that are going to high school and can get credit for college and get them on, if that's their jam and their path, I love that. It's cost effective for the students, it's cost effective for the state, and it's a really good program to get kids going. And I love what these guys do. To me, the technical education component of what our system is really, really good. I mean, what a great campus, right? I mean, these guys do great work, and that is a real key component for what this economy's gonna need. Okay, back to your original question though. To me, the biggest thing is money's important. It's not everything, right? But it's it's kind of like, have you ever tried to buy something without it? It's hard. I think we need fundamental school finance reform. The system was really built on a 1980s model, and that's before you had open enrollment. That's before you had Maricopa County, 50% of the students go to a school other than the one they're assigned to. So it could be to a different district, could be within that district, could be to a charter school. And I don't think the formula's kept pace with that. The legislature did some really, really good things this year. More money for special ed students. That is a really high cost for districts and charters. But I think 2.0 really is looking at how we fund. Some districts can pass bonds and overrides, some can't. It's kind of a hodgepodge, and to me, sort of starting anew and looking at the evaluation. It's going to take more money to solve that problem, but that would be my recommendation to the next legislature and governor as something to look at.
Well, probably the biggest elephant in the room for us is the aggregate expenditure limit. And so you can allocate all the money you want, but we can only spend a certain part of that money. So for example, if the state legislature does not provide an override or extension to the AEL, then we stand to lose more than $14 million that we cannot spend. It's not that we lose it, we just don't need to spend it. And so that's pretty small potatoes compared to some of our districts around us. Some districts in the West Valley stand to lose $42 to $43 million if the AEL is not extended. And so that's the biggest hurdle that we have to overcome, because we have to be able to operate our programs and services to be able to serve our communities. And so for me, I think, as was stated before, I just think there needs to be some reform about how education is funded. Because quite honestly, you can't be 50 in the state and teacher salaries and continue to enroll high quality teachers to put in classrooms, because without them, we're nothing.
I'm going to answer two parts to your question, and I have to piggyback on what Scott said. If you're not aware of the aggregate expenditure limit, you need to become familiar with that. It impacts district schools, it does not impact charter schools. And if the AEL is not overridden for the upcoming school year, Dysart schools will lose the ability to spend nearly $40 million in our budget. It doesn't cut it, we're just not allowed to spend it. And basically what would happen is, on April 1st, the county superintendent would quit allowing us the opportunity to write checks, to continue to fund us for the budget that we have in place. It's real. There have been promises made by the governor and to call a special session that have been not fulfilled, and we would just call on all of our legislators to continue to put pressure on the governor to call a special session to discuss AEL. It's a real issue. There is a cliff that's coming. It was overridden last year, and it's based upon a law that was passed in 1980. If you think about the way that you operate business, if you were operating your business today on a 42-year-old business model, you might not be that successful. And it's something that needs to be addressed long-term, but in order to get to the long-term piece, we've got to be able to get through the short-term piece first. The other thing that I want to address, you asked about what can local leaders and local communities do. In Dysart schools, we're educating the next doctors, the next nurses, the next teachers, the next police officers, the next construction workers, and the list goes on and on and on. One of the areas that we struggled with during the pandemic is finding partner businesses for our students to work with in our career technical education programs. The fact that we weren't able to take students in our nursing program and have them be prepared or do their practicum work in hospitals and doctor's offices created an issue for a group of kids. We have business marketing programs that we would love to partner with local businesses with so that we can have our students with real world experience. And so our state and local leaders can help us continue with those connections as we move forward. Money is an important component. I don't want to discount that. It certainly is. But sometimes there's things that are more important than money, and that's those opportunities for us to connect with our community and to put our students in real life situations where they're going to be successful, learn the skills necessary to go into the workforce and be immediately successful. And that's what we want. We want to continue this great community that we have. And we're looking for partners. We're looking for projects that we can partner with together that are beyond money. And so we would ask with our state and local leaders two things. Please address AEL. Please address AEL. I know one person in the room understands it very well. Please address AEL. And for our local leaders and our local business folks, look for ways to partner with us. We're happy to talk to you about anything at any time and ways that we can work together for the benefit of our kids and this community.
Thank you. And that's a big passion of mine is the idea of the private-public partnerships in education. I know 5 or 6 years ago they changed the I don't want to call it a formula, but the funding split, Scott, for what at the time was JTEDs, now are CTEDs, right? In terms of how much needs to get co-funded from the private sector for the programs you're running. For the entire panel, K-12, higher ed, what do you see kind of as the future of that concept, that private-public partnership? And the reason I asked in my space, obviously, is a little different, but we look a lot at the new entrants. You look at who is changing the idea of education. Google, right? Google is not an education provider, but now they have a massive higher ed apparatus, right? They're saying, we don't need to go to MIT to get our engineers. We're just going to develop a Google engineering program. Amazon, Apple, they're all doing the same thing. If you look at Coursera, right, which now has hundreds of millions of people signing up, everything is private-public partnership, right? They have to take a public university like ASU, they take a private company like IBM, and they say, ASU, you teach what IBM asks, and we'll put it on our platform. How do we get more out of that? So it's not just tax dollars, not just public funding that's transforming education. I'll let Andy take a crack at it, because this is the cutting edge piece here.
Let me jump in just for a second. So we were at a technology summit a few days ago, and I've heard this multiple times, and some of you may be sitting in the same position where someone will say, well, we can't find anybody to work that job, and it's been open for a year. Well, if you've got a couple $100,000 sitting in a budget somewhere that sits there for a year, why don't you give me one of your employees? I'll let you use my lab as one of my instructors, like as an HVAC or a medical assistant or a dental assistant or a pharmacy tech. Give me one of your individuals to teach my class, and I'll give you 35 medical assisting students at the end of that year. I mean, it's almost like it's a duh. It's almost like we have to change our mindset to think about those business partnerships, because let's think differently about what can we do collectively together to be a great benefit not only students, but also to your company or organization. So I just think it's a different way of thinking, because sometimes businesses are a little hesitant in getting involved with K-12 or in the CTE realm because it's just something that's new. And so it's about that clarity of conversation and the clarity of being an understanding of what we do collectively together makes a huge difference in our community for our students.
How do we cut through the red tape on that, Scott? How do we cut through the red tape of giving businesses the real freedom to go into ASU or to Ottawa or to Dysart or to West-MEC? how do we give them the freedom to simply say, I've got money, I've got a problem, you got a solution, here's the money, just go solve it, without having to have a legislature change a law or have Congress change a funding from, how do we cut through that red tape to bring real modern flexibility?
One of the things I mentioned this morning is I've been here since July 1st, and I've met just lots of people. And several people know West-MEC, but they don't know West-MEC. And so it's my job to make sure they understand what we do here. And so it's a big issue that we understand that West-MEC is this beautiful building, it's orange and everything's great, but what's really going on inside of that? And so I think it's a lack of communication, and also the pandemic hurt us because there's a lot of new people in new positions, in new businesses, and we have to go back and redo that whole thing over again because it's just brand new to everyone. But the issue is you got to have two people coming together and just say yes. Without complications, without obstacles, without all the uhs and ahas and what ifs, that you got to be able to get together and say, how can we make it happen? And just say yes.
You know, I want to jump in on that as well. How do we cut through the red tape? I have a big pair of scissors. Call me. We will work with businesses, we will work with companies, and we will cut through red tape. We want to expand our partnerships. We want to expand what we're doing in the community. Again, we're educating the next wave of this community. So just give us a call. There's ways to work through it, like Scott said. Let's get together, let's have a conversation, and we'll cut through all the red tape and we'll find opportunities that are beneficial for all of us.
So you heard it. Some of you come to me in the past and said, I need to get into Dysart, I want to work with Dysart. So afterwards, say, come say hello and talk to them, because I agree. I love hearing that from leadership, and keep it simple, right? Let's sit down, let's talk without a handshake. Do you have something?
Yeah, I'm just gonna add, for us, if you've seen one charter school, you've seen one charter school. They're all different, they all operate different, they all focus on different things. Some are into the arts, some are into dual language, some are into sports, some are into agriculture. I mean, you name it, it's across the board. And we need to do a better job of it, but it's absolutely incumbent on us to make sure our students can go to that next level to have that partnership. And it's a little bit bad on us sometimes, I think, for not reaching out as much as we should. And we've got some really cool examples. If you're in art school, you can partner with this Phoenix Symphony or whatever it is. But I think for those kids to be successful, it's a vital ingredient, and we do a pretty good job of it, but we got a lot of work to do.
I would add to your point too, it is about two people saying yes. And I would say too, if I can say the I word once more, innovation means we do things that have never been done before. You know, one thing I love about ASU is I don't think I've ever heard someone say, Todd, we can't do that because we've never done it. It's, let's figure out how to do it instead. And at the scale at which we operate, at the scale at which the valley is growing, the scale of the problems facing us, what better time to do it? I mean, for example, ASU is home to the largest engineering school in the nation. It is part of something called the New Economy Initiative. It's a statewide initiative as well, built to figure out these partnerships, to connect business with world-class engineering, for example, resources. And so if there is some way that we want to partner with any of you, that you want to partner, let's talk, absolutely. As you said, getting two people to say yes is a big, big part of it. To Jim's point about connecting our students, it's not just about dollars, it's about connecting our students to workforce. When people say we have a shortage of cybersecurity professionals, a shortage of medical professionals, I get it, totally, we need to address that. But part of it is in the training that can actually address now some of that, and then longer term too. And what that looks like is a little bit different. That means all of our coursework is not in a classroom. Our coursework is out here. It's in the community. It's working with the business. It's figuring out what a real world problem and all of its complexity looks like, so that our students, when they graduate from ASU, don't only have the book knowledge, they get that, but they also have the practical business sense to apply it in what's called the real world, the complex world too. We do this at ASU, we do this from our West Campus, whether it's partnering with the Arizona Coyotes or Banner Healthcare, to figure out how our students can be, to be frank, a team of consultants before they're a team of consultants. And so we do this routinely. I'd be happy to talk with any of you one-on-one, but again, to your point, two people saying yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and then just going to advance on that, with companies that are large enough, schools, especially a small school like ours, not necessarily a large school like ASU, can customize programming so that it meets the needs of that organization. So in our case, it would be a private partnership, and schools are desperate for these opportunities because they provide students with the enrichment of being able to enhance their education with hands-on experience in the workforce, and then when they're done and they're ready to graduate, it provides them with a lot of job opportunities because they have that experience.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's going to be a big part of higher ed in the future, and I think it'll become a big part part of K-12 as well, at least the high school level. I see a lot of those private engagements growing in scope. So let's talk about the workforce a little more. We've talked about it some, but let's directly talk about the workforce. We've got a huge problem. It's not just in the United States, it is globally. It is expected to last. I keep every couple months a new study comes out, like maybe the trend has changed. It's not changing. We have a workforce shortage. Part of that is due to the baby boomers retiring. That is part of it. There's this big retirement age. If you look at the bell curve of our demographics, right, it's heavier on the retirement age there. But millennials are now the biggest generation, so that there's still a healthy workforce age population. It's just not backfilling the workforce at the level we would expect or hope. So with that, I want to talk about innovation. How do we change our workforce so that we're not just losing jobs? Because we are losing, right? There's industries that are not existing anymore, that won't exist in 5 years from now. And there's new ones that we don't have the skills to fill. Personally, I hire software engineers, so I understand that problem. And I'll share, and I'll give you a chance, I don't share much here as a moderator, but I do work in higher ed, and I've worked in higher ed for 15 years. So if you're doing the math, I started when I was 14. And so at University of Phoenix, our big focus right now is not on degrees, which we've been a university since the 1970s. So it's a big thing for us. It's actually on skill development. We're saying, how do we change the global workforce? And we're saying it's not by giving them an associate's degree, a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, or a doctorate degree. It's about teaching them the skills they need to be part of the workforce. And so we've redesigned all of our curriculum to be skill aligned. So Dr. Sandrin, if you're wondering what that means to someone in a similar institution, or Dr. Tyner, we wrote all our classes that, look, if you get a college credit, you're going to get a skill. We're not going to assign a credit without actually assigning a skill that we can assess. We're going to have a hands-on assessment that proves you know that skill. And so we're no longer just awarding credit for grades. We're teaching skills and teaching people what that skill is, telling them how they learned it, and then being able to go tell an employer, this is the skill and this is why we can prove it to you. And we've got the federal government to give us a check and say, yeah, okay, you're okay doing that. So that's always the hardest part, by the way, in higher ed. So that's what we're focused. I hired a software engineer yesterday. He does not have a college degree. He doesn't have an associate's degree. He doesn't have a bachelor's degree. In fact, he's never gone to school post-high school. And he's a software engineer. I'm going to pay him a lot of money. And it's because I interview for skills. I no longer interview, say, you have to have a bachelor's degree to apply. Big part of my job is working with big businesses. We've talked to major Fortune 500, Bank of America, Delta Airlines, and what we said is, hey, are you still requiring a bachelor's degree? And they said, no, we're actually doing away with it entirely. That's a trend. IBM is going the same way. We're not requiring a bachelor's degree. I don't care what position it's for. Unless the state says you have to have a license, we're not going to make it happen. So it's a change. So I want to talk about workforce development. How can you at your institutions, how can you revolutionize your paradigms, revolutionize your traditional thoughts, and say, look, we need to tackle this in a new way, because millennials aren't going to college, Gen Z's not going to college, but they can still be productive in the workforce. How do we change our idea of the workforce? I'm going to start with ASU, because you're the biggest in the state, you're the biggest in the country, right? You're not the biggest in the world, because some of these countries have crazy large universities, but for the US, ASU is the largest. How do we change that idea of workforce development from traditional bachelor's degree to something else?
Yeah, Chris, it's a great question, and it's again around mindset. It's around what does the world need now, and you used a word that's really important: skills. Absolutely. There are also things moving in the workforce that are, this is an overused word, but unprecedented. One of which is skills now have a half-life of less than 5 years. We also know that of the global workforce, it's estimated that at least half is going to need to upskill significantly by 2025. Last little fun fact here, 80% of Fortune 500 CEOs say the biggest challenge facing them is the workforce that they need with the skills they need for today, and importantly for tomorrow. And so that blows out of the water the old models we used to have in higher ed of let's build a degree and it'll be good for 40 years or so. Instead, it means let's build a degree that is flexible, adaptable to what the market needs and to what our students need. Let's also think beyond the box of what if students don't need that degree, as you said, what are the assets, again, we can bring to the table to help learners no matter where they are, when they are, whether they want a degree, need a degree, or not. Again, 310,000 of those learners are now affiliated with ASU for something we call our learning enterprise to do that. So it takes, as you said, a complete rethink of what workforce development looks like, what skill development looks like, what skill shelf life looks like, and to begin to normalize a bit the fact that our workforce, what is it, first graders today, the majority of them, 65% or more of first graders today will have a job in their working lifetime that does not currently exist. So how do we create degrees for jobs that don't exist? The trick is, it's not as much about the degree as it is about the broader skills we impart, and the biggest one of those is a hard one to impart. It's adaptability and critical thinking. Because I can hire them to do this job that's gonna be awesome for 2 or 3 years, then am I hiring someone else 2 or 3 years to do the next job I need? Or can I find a more stable workforce that is completely adaptable? And no matter what of the 450 plus degrees we offer at ASU a student graduates with, we commit to not only the skills, but also that adaptability and that resilience in the marketplace.
Yeah, I would definitely jump on that. So critical thinking, like that's what college education is supposed to be about. It's about critical thinking. And once you teach people how to be critical thinkers, then they can solve the problems of the future. So yes, the workforce is going to change. The skills they're learning right now might be only valuable for 5 years, but the truth is it'll get them into the marketplace and then they're going to evolve the marketplace. So here's the truth, I'm going to give you the truth about engineering. When we teach engineers, we teach them what they need to know to solve problems and to think critically to solve the engineering problems. What they're going to do is they're going to go out into the workforce and going to find out what the real problems are because they're this far above the level that we're teaching them at the collegiate level. The workforce is way ahead of where we're at in colleges and universities. It takes too much time just to get them to think basically like an engineer. So the skills are okay because they're just going to evolve in industry. They're going to learn the new things in industry. That's where engineers learn the skills, and that's where all of us have learned our skills. In the workforce, we get a job, and then we evolve with the job. So I think it's important to teach them skills right now. That was a word, that was a no-no in higher education. Don't say the word skills. Hide under the table if you say that. We don't teach skills. We teach critical thinking. But today, there's just an article on a week ago, I don't know if you saw it in the higher ed, it was about stackable credentials. Yeah, it's about, now that's what they think is important. Teach them some skills, they have some credentials, they can walk out, they know how to do things, it introduces them to the workforce, and then they can evolve in the workforce.
I want to jump in. I wanted to just jump in for a second. I have a degree from the University of Phoenix, and I wish that this whole notion that credit wasn't just based on grades was around when I did that, because it would make my life a lot easier.
We were just late in the game.
Right. But that being said, critical thinking is a very, very important concept for students to be successful. And we have to do that not only with our students, but with our staff as well. The workforce issue is real. We can't find enough teachers. The teacher shortage exists. There's a lot of reasons for that, but we have to figure out ways to grow our own. And so in Dysart schools, we have worked to become, and continue to work to become very efficient with our work staff, with our workforce, and to provide opportunities for our staff to grow and be able to advance within our industry. We partnered with Ottawa University, for example, with our staff to provide opportunities for our staff to engage in college programs, in degree programs at a reduced rate because of our partnership together. We're working with folks with our paraprofessionals to help them enter into teaching professional programs so that they can advance and get those degrees. And so it's a matter of us looking not only to teach our students to think critically and to be better problem solvers, but to also engage our workforce and challenge them to continue in their advancement as well. And it's important that we do that, and it's important that we look for opportunities like our partnership with Ottawa, like our partnerships with West-MEC, to continue to provide opportunities for our folks to continue to grow. Because if we don't grow, we become stagnant and become obsolete. In an era where you can learn how to do almost anything with a 2-minute YouTube clip, and being somebody who's not very handy, I can learn how to install something in my garage with a 2-minute YouTube, video. We need to teach people to go beyond that and to think critically and to understand that problem solving and the ability to analyze and synthesize issues is what's going to continue their success as they move into the future.
It's kind of a loaded question. When you think about the millennials, the generation of students we have now are a little different than when we grew up. And many of our students aren't going to stay in one job for a long period of time. They're going to be very mobile, and they're going to be moving around looking for different opportunities. So taking that philosophy, the first thing that we try to do is make sure we understand business and industry needs. And we also have to understand student desires and needs and their skill So for example, each one of our programs, we have a career tree that's up, and every one of them is from Mark Turner's work for CTE. And it doesn't just show them one specific career path. It says if you get these certifications, you can do a multitude of things with this certification. You go to community college, technical school, or four-year school, you can do all these things. So our students nowadays want choices. What they don't want to do is feel like they're back in the corner, don't be able to do one thing. And so it's a multi-level skill attainment that students have to give them choice to be able to feel like they're in control of their own destiny, being able to make their own choices at their own time whenever they want to, and they don't feel like they're back into a corner. So I think it's our job to make sure we're nimble enough to understand the needs, the wants, and most importantly, the desires and choices of our students to match those with business and industry demands.
Well, he stole my thunder a little bit. I was going to say almost the exact same thing, which is I think for us, a lot of it is, and charters are pretty good at this, is meeting the students where they're at. If a student is going to learn more because they're involved in agriculture and that's their jam and that's how they're going to be successful, I love that. If the school is going to focus on trying to get the student that's behind up to grade level in a low-income area or something like that, that's great. And so I really agree with that. I think meeting the students where they're at and helping them navigate how they're going to be successful in districts do I think a lot of that as well. It is a really critical component to when those kids successful and fulfilling that workforce needs. And if you want to learn about it, talk to Melissa because she does an amazing job of trying to help those students sort of get where they're at and then get to that next level.
So let's get local. We talked a lot about global issues, national issues, trends in higher ed and K-12 ed. But West Valley, Northwest Valley, Surprise on Mirage. This is an area that's been changing rapidly. Actually, I think for 15, 20 years it's been changing rapidly. But the last few, even more so. Population growth continues to be a driving force, but the job outlet here in the Northwest Valley has also changed. We've become a logistics hub with the railroad, but also with the expansion of 303, with the Northern Parkway, with issues in California affecting the Port of LA, right? So this has become a logistics hub, and the types of jobs in the Northwest Valley are starting to change as well. TSMC will continue that. The semiconductor industry in Arizona is going to play a huge role in our economy. So how do we need to better serve these communities? From each of your perspectives, what can we be doing better? Where should we be investing in Surprise, in El Mirage, with education? Where should we be putting our energy and our efforts right here in these communities? And I'm trying to think who I want to pick on. And I think I'm going to go with Dr. Tyner. Because you are, and this is just my personal opinion, you are the local education. Yes, we have Dysart, big geographically right, multiple is out. West-MEC, same thing. Charters is statewide, ASU is obviously statewide and national. You're local. You are a local institution, local campus sitting here in the community. How do we invest better in the Northwest Valley to address the changing population, younger, more kids, and also the workforce needs?
So first of all, you have to figure out what those workforce needs to be, right? Just take a look at what industries are coming in. We're an interesting institution. We're a liberal arts school. I would argue that probably not a lot of the needs that we're going to be seeing in the future are in that direction. So what we're doing currently right now is we're starting to look at the healthcare profession. We're looking at the tech side, computer science, engineering, as a means of meeting what we anticipate will be both the local and the worldwide needs for that matter. So I think for us, we have to take a look at what our program is, what our offering is. And if we don't have the right programs and the right offerings, then we need to change on the fly pretty quickly.
Yeah, I agree. So, West-MEC, how has it changed for you, or has it changed? Did you launch 2 new programs this year? Is the demand changing from what you've offered in the past based on the population growth and the industry growth in certain industries?
Well, it used to be supply and demand, and now I think COVID kind of put that on its head. Now it's about demand and supply. And so I think we're in a situation where, for example, we just work with the city of Surprise and their economic development folks, and I think there's an untapped resource here in Surprise in this area of individuals that need to come back and be retooled or retrained or to start a new opportunity. And so we're working with them to add a component in our adult education program, which taps into individuals that may need some training. But there's other challenges that come along with that. Transportation is a huge issue, especially for West-MEC folks. There's no transportation for students, with the exception of 2 or 3 of our districts that have provided a little bus to get there. Without transportation, most things are impossible be able to accomplish. But then if you bring adults back, some of them work during the day, or do they have the ability to take night classes? Do they have children where they need childcare? We need resources to be able to fund those programs. We need teachers to be able to administer the content in those programs. And so it's a whole cycle of challenges and obstacles that we just have to say yes to and find resources and ways to overcome that. But it's reaching out, saying what are our needs and how can we be part of the solution rather than sitting back and grabbing back being a problem.
Dr. Dean, has it changed for you? Is Dysart able to keep up with the growth? Is there new challenges?
Yeah, you know, this is my 18th year in the Dysart School District, and so I've seen our district transform over the course of the time that I've been here. When I started in 2005, we were in the midst of what was called hypergrowth at the time, and we were the largest, or the fastest growing school district in the nation. When I started in this school district, we had about 10,000 students, and today we have 23, and we're growing again. And yes, we're able to keep up. We continue to look to launch and launch programs that are going to be effective for this community. And so we have bolstered our healthcare programs in our high schools. You know, we have those that operate both on our campus and in partnership on West-MEC campuses as well. And we continue to look for opportunities to expand those types of programs that are going to be effective for this community. It's important to note, as Scott said, resources are vital, right? But partnerships are as well. And I talked about that earlier, and it's most appropriate in a conversation with the chamber. We're willing to partner with every small business in the cities, with every large business in the cities, for aspects that benefit our kids, that will benefit our communities in the future. I know I've talked about that a lot today, but that's really what our industry is about. You know, in our high schools, you can get an international baccalaureate degree. You can graduate with an associate's degree through dual enrollment. You can take honors courses, advanced placement courses that'll get you ahead in colleges across the country. We're placing kids in colleges across the country, in prestigious colleges across the country. We're also graduating kids who are going directly into industry and being incredibly successful. We're placing kids at ASU who are coming in as engineering and architecture students well above other high school students in the Valley because of our partnership and what we're able to do in the Northwest Valley. And so resources are a huge part, but again, our partnership with the local cities, our partnership with the city Surprise, and our conversations with them about what they see in the near future in terms of workforce needs helps drive what we do. And those partnerships have to stay alive and they have to stay engaged for our community to prosper.
So let's take 30 seconds. If you want it, I'm not going to make it. I love when I'm not dealing with politicians because politicians feel like they got to take all the time. So 30 seconds for any closing thoughts. Anything that I didn't bring up that you're like, I wish you would have asked about this. This is your chance to share it. And we'll start with Jake. Yeah, down at the end.
You got it. First of all, thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for all you do for the community. You wouldn't be here if you didn't care. And so really appreciate all of that, as we all do. You know, to me, is stay in the game. Is you know, the truth of the matter is the state makes a lot of the decisions around K-12 education, as Representative Osborne can attest to, and being active in that process is really, really important. Life's not fair, but when you start kindergarten, we got to make it as fair as you can, and make it as you give everybody an equal chance, no matter what their zip code is or where they're from, as they get through K-12. And so to me, the most effective way to do that is staying politically as active as appropriate, and engaged with your lawmakers and the governor and whoever else, and being really aggressive citizens on what you think is important for your community.
So two things real quick I mentioned earlier. The first thing is transportation. As you may not know, as I mentioned before, is the state doesn't provide any funding whatsoever for transportation from our partner districts to West-MEC. And so, as an example, one of our students who lives in Gila Bend drives to our Northeast campus an hour and 20 minutes every single day back and forth for our diesel mechanics program. And so, that's a huge issue for us. Again, that's something that I think the legislature can help us on. Secondarily, is we need students more than what we have them now, and the traditional graduation requirements puts us operating in CTEs almost as if we're operating inside of a fenced-in area. And so in Missouri, we were able to allow credits for math and science to be awarded through CTE program credits, so it freed up the opportunity for students to attend more opportunities, more choices, more CTE programs. So for an example, in our automotive program, our students that come out of our automotive program end up with 840 or 860 hours. if they could go an additional year, they could be warranty certified to be able to go on and make a lot more money in those areas. And so if we had them longer for more classes, we could do a lot more with it. Students right now have to be on their home campus for a minimum of 4 hours for Dysart to get their full ADM or their full money. Other than if they're not on campus for 4 hours, then they don't get their full money, and that restricts us or prohibits us from having students longer, which we think we could better prepare our students if we could get them like the freshman or sophomore year. So challenges, transportation, and the graduation requirements really put us in a position where we're limited on what we can and can't do.
I would echo Jake and Scott's gratitude to each of you for your engagement, your partnership. Many of you know ASU is driven by something that exceeds the level of a mission statement. It's called ASU's charter. And the charter, I encourage you to have a look at it, but I'll give you a few bits of it. Part of it says that we are measured not by whom we exclude, but by whom we include and how they succeed. And that they are our students and that they are our communities. The charter goes on to say we assume fundamental responsibility. This is kind of a weird thing for a university to say. We assume fundamental responsibility for the overall economic health of the communities in which we are embedded. And so we take that very seriously, and it is very much what Scott mentioned and what Jim mentioned in particular about people getting together to say yes, and about the partnerships as well. To Chris's last question, we in the West Valley, many of you know this, we are in one of the fastest growing parts of the fastest growing counties in the nation. We have people, workforce we need to develop as well. What are the ways in which we need to think differently to ensure that we produce learners ready to do that workforce in ways we haven't before? About 80% of the West Valley working age population doesn't have a college degree. What are the ways we close that gap to ensure we produce workforce and create a great success for our students and the communities that they serve? So thank you.
Scott, that student from Gila Bend, if he wants to enroll in Dysart schools, we'll transport him. We'll save him about 30 minutes a day. We can do that. So I just wanted to say that. You know, I'm from a small Midwest town, and we moved here when I was a kid, and we were raised in really strong Midwest values. And my dad always made a point of emphasis to help us understand that communities are built on strong education programs, public safety, strong government, and local business. We're going to do our part from the education piece. We want to partner with you to do our part as a community. Our approach is very simple. We're going to be warm, we're going to be real, we're going to be bold, and we're going to be intentional in what we do to provide our students the best opportunity to be successful, to grow our communities. So come partner with us. Let's do this together, because we can do great things for this community.
We love partnering with you, so we appreciate that. We'll continue to partner with you. I'll leave our last comments on this. The state of higher education is interesting right now. The expenses are getting a little out of control. This year, personally, for me, this is the first time I've been in higher education for almost 40 years. It's the first time I saw significant numbers of students come to our institution, prepared to start school with us, and couldn't find a way to close the gap. And I know a lot of you are looking at me thinking, guys, do something about it, your school, drop the costs. That's easily said, it just doesn't work that way, unfortunately. Higher education needs help. These students cannot fund $25,000 to $30,000 to close their gap in 1 year. So I think that when you look at some of the alternatives for the students, when they're looking at not going to college, I think some of the reasons are going to be more so that they can't afford to be in higher education versus they want to be there. I think part of it is they want to be there, but they just can't afford to be there anymore. And it's something that this country needs to take seriously over the next decade. Because if we don't think about that and do something about that quickly, we're going to be in deep trouble. The government was talking about almost doubling the amount of money that they were going to put into the Pell Grant funding. So in case you don't know, students max out at about $6,500 for a Pell Grant. Our all-in cost of becoming to our institution, again, we're a private institution, our all-in cost is about $50,000. $6,000 doesn't go real far to covering that expense. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done in this country. By the way, I don't think the answer is just giving the money away, right? Just forgiving the loans. That is not the answer. No skin in the game equals no work ethic when it comes to time to get into the degree. Thank you. I'll stand down. Thank you very much. It's not about giving the money away, just giving them education. They have to have skin in the game, but we have to close that gap a little bit more so that it's affordable to everybody. To everybody. We have the socioeconomics in this part of the country is an area where we need additional help.
Yeah, and I would say if you want to back it up with facts, high school is free. and our graduation rate's nowhere close to 100%. So, yeah, free does not solve the problem. It's simply easy to say on teleprompter, right? So, well, thank you all so much. I personally, this is one of my favorite events of the year because it's in my own backyard, in education. And so I always appreciate you coming out. I appreciate getting time with you to talk to you, especially in the fields that you're all experts. So thank you for attending. For our community partners, we want to say thank you for supporting the chamber. We can't do what we do without the support of our business community and other partners. So APS, Crescent Crown Distributing, ASU, Banner Health, Desert Diamond Casinos, Ottawa University, Sun Health, and Schnebly Hill. Those are our community investors. Thank you so much. If you're not a member of the Surprise Regional Chamber, come talk to myself, come talk to Raul. I believe Chance is still here. There he is in the back. Talk to Chance in the back. Talk to Mary, who's sitting in the back chair there. Any of us can tell you about what we do and what chamber membership brings. If you're not a member of the chamber, you're here this morning, come talk. One of us would love to tell you about how we're serving the community, the businesses, and the citizens here in the Northwest Valley. So thank you for attending. Stick around, get some more coffee, meet somebody new, and then be safe as you leave. Thank you so much.